All right, hello guys and girls. This is Sean Lonke, your host of the Midnight Highway Radio. What you're about to listen to is an interview I conducted a couple years ago with Josh Hurd. This interview, guys, was actually one of my favorite that I've ever done because, yeah, I've interviewed guys like Edgar Mitchell and, like Carmen Reed, all kinds of very important people in the field. But I don't know. I just kind of connected with Josh during this interview. It flew by, like that hour went by so fast. And just what he said, man, like just the way we talked about death, and it really fascinated me. It really intrigued me. We seem to share the same kind of thinking process, I guess. I don't know, but I want to thank Josh for coming on my show that time. I actually had him on a couple of times before, and I'll probably definitely get him on again. But Josh, if you're watching this, man, excellent interview, dude. I'm gonna look back at, I think I said 42 minutes in. I'm gonna look back and see if I can find an EVP, and if I do, I'll post it up here. But yeah, I hope you guys and girls enjoy the show. Definitely subscribe to the channel, like the video, and please comment. All right, guys, peace.
Able to like move the be that bad. I mean, you're listening to the Mystic Paranormal Podcast with your host Sean Lonkert. To reach Sean, visit www.mysticparanormal.net. Now here's your host, Sean Lonkert. All right, Josh, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Why don't you?
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It's a rainy night out. I just heard some thunder, some claps of lightning out there. So it's
perfect.
Yeah, it's a perfect setting here in Ohio, at least for a paranormal show. That's for sure.
Love it.
So let me ask you this. Just tell us a little bit about you for those out there that don't know you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Josh. I am a paranormal author, documentary filmmaker. I am a co-owner of what we call Malvern Manor in Malvern, Iowa. But yeah, I've done 6 books on the paranormal, 9 documentary films so far.
Nice.
Yeah, looking forward to doing a lot more.
Nice. So what kind of documentaries do you do? What are they based on? Are they based on like myths, or do you actually go out and investigate?
A lot of hands-on investigation. Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple that I, have done in the past that just more kind of explore the weird and the unknown,
okay,
things of that nature. But yeah, for the most part, like my full-length documentaries are, very hands-on, experimentation, things of that nature.
Right. Now, I always like to ask people this because for some reason it seems to always be a yes went to this question. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences prior to actually being a paranormal investigator?
Very much so, yeah. It's interesting, like, I guess, like, I grew up kind of always interested in this stuff.
Right.
Like, I would read, like, ghost stories and things like that, whatever. And so I've always, like, had an interest.
Okay.
But, yeah, it wasn't until, like, I lost an uncle. When I was about 12 years old, I lost an uncle. He died quite young. And, there were some odd things, like, surrounding his death that kind of got me asking the bigger questions.
Right.
And, ultimately, that was what kind of threw me into this field, like, starting to read the works of, like Hans Holzer and Ed and Lorraine Warren and things of that nature.
Yes.
And like all the case files that I could possibly get my hands on, whether they were like parapsychological or otherwise, like I wanted to absorb as much information as possible.
Right.
To see if I could really, get the ultimate answer. I mean, which is, what happens to us when we expire. Which,
Yes. I know. I'll tell you, man. That's a question of the hour right there, because we're all gonna meet that hour one day. So
exactly, man. Exactly, and that's what's so fascinating about it. It's
right. It is.
Everybody has to do this,
mm-hmm.
Whether you like it or not.
Yes, it's a process of life that just has to happen. You're not getting off this rock alive. So.
Exactly.
So, if you don't mind, like you said, some weird things happen with, about your uncle and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
Do you mind mentioning something that was bizarre or out of the ordinary?
Yeah, so it was interesting because when my uncle passed away, he was actually living in the Los Angeles area.
Okay.
So we knew that this was like the final stages of AIDS, is what he ultimately passed away from.
Okay.
Now, so, I mean, we kind of knew, kind of saw this coming. Now, obviously, I was fairly young, like I said, 12 years old about. My brother was even younger than me. So a lot of my family went out there. However, my brother and I stayed back. We stayed in Iowa. And it was interesting because, you know, he passed away, and then we all met up at my grandparents' place. This would be my uncle's parents. We all met up at their place, and we were just discussing his final moments of life.
Right.
My grandfather was one telling the story, and it was interesting because he said, you know, basically my uncle had woken up and he saw something. And he was like almost not necessarily addressing it, but addressing it with his eyes. Like he was looking at something.
Right.
And everybody kind of got up and kind of went around his bedside. And he was, again, seeing something that nobody else in that room was privy to. And he smiled, like a very big smile.
Wow.
And then he closed his eyes and passed away. Now, right when my grandfather was telling this story, there was this toy radio that came tumbling down the top of the steps and slid onto the dining room floor where we were all congregated right there.
Wow.
And it started playing this song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Now, it's interesting because like this toy radio is one of those wind-up jobs. You got to wind it up and play for 30 seconds or so. But it started playing that song. Now, not only like is the song significant anyway, just, you know, the song itself, but like that was one of Uncle Todd's favorite songs that was played at one of his funerals there at UCLA. Like, I mean, it was ridiculous. Like the synchronicity there was just nuts.
Right.
So, I mean, that was one of the things. Like, we all just kind of sat there, looked at each other, and without saying a word, like, knew what exactly was going on. Like, he was there. Like, he was saying something to us.
Right.
Like, I'm hearing you. Everything's cool. Whatever. Like, everybody just lost it. You know, everybody just, like, started crying. You know, it was a really cool moment.
That, you know, that's amazing that you say that. Like, you know, he got that big smile before he died. You know, my wife's grandfather, right, like before he passed away, he had cancer, and he was talking about seeing a little girl that was like running around the room, and he used to fly planes in the military, so he would so he was acting like he was playing a video game when he really wasn't playing a video game, and honestly it looked like he was having a blast before he actually went. And he started talking about all these people coming to see him. My grandmother, she talked about her mother coming to see her and saying that you can't go to the grave without acknowledging your daughter, because there was like a kind of like a gross thing going on. So she couldn't go to the grave without forgiving her daughter for something. So once she did that, she passed, and it was just like she passed of emphysema, and it's amazing, man. I don't know what it is that we go to, but it doesn't seem like it's that bad. I mean,
exactly, and that's just it, man. Like it's so bizarre. Like I've always, like, one of my favorite questions is, you know, like to ask like during an EVP session or something like that is, you know, like what really happens to us? Like, is dying that bad? Is it really that bad? And the general answer that I've ever got is, no, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so you add that in with like that smile, like, you know, and things like that. And it's like, this isn't something that we should necessarily fear at all. Like, I get it. Like, everybody fears it. Sure.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's like, this isn't necessarily something we have to be afraid of. It's just a transition.
Exactly. And something else too, I always say it like this: everybody's got their own religious beliefs and what happens when you die.
Sure.
But I look at it like this: worst case scenario, okay, if you die and there's nothing at all, which I don't think is true, because based on the paranormal investigating that I've done, I say we go on. That being said, where were you in 1933? You weren't around, but you weren't complaining about it either. It didn't suck, but you didn't exist at the same time. So it's like, if it goes back to that moment, I mean, it's hard to tell. I don't think it does, though. I mean, personally, but it just makes you think death can't be that bad. It just
absolutely,
yeah, it can't be that bad. I mean, I think it's harder on the living than it is the dying.
See, that's a good part. Like, really good point that you make there, man. It's like, it's just the loss, the finality of death, you know?
Yes.
And sometimes, you know, damn it, you wish you said something to this person before they got in. Sometimes we're not granted that luxury. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes people just go so fast. And it's hard on us here. But yeah, I think it's all connected. It's a learning experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for us as well as the people passing on. Like,
exactly.
I think we're all on this crazy train together.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You know, it's weird too because my mother, she actually passed away in 2017. She had stage 4 cervical cancer, and yeah, that was a traumatic experience. And like before she died, she told me, I have a twin sister, Jamie, and she told me, Sean, you got to let her know that everything's going to be okay. You got to let her know. And I'm like, I understand, Mom. You know, I'll say whatever you want. I'll be the bigger guy here, and you know, kind of be the rock for her. And she told me, she's like, I want to tell you something. She's like, I had this dream. And I'm like, okay. I started getting interested right away because, you know, we grew up in a haunted house. So me and my mother have had talks about dying and what, you know, what it might be like being a ghost, you know, after watching the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she just told me that she had this dream, and she was at a brick wall, and the brick wall was all colored, and the bricks were all colored. And she said that she was able to, like, move the bricks, and as she moved them, this gleaming light came through, like, of all different colors. And right before she could get through get enough room to get through the brick wall, her husband came in and actually woke her up, and she thought that if she had actually crossed, that she would have died. Now, the weird thing about that is, after she passed, she came to me in a dream, of course, and she told me, I said, and I knew she was dead in the dream, and I wasn't afraid at all, and I said, Mom, what's it like to die? And she told me she fell in love with the colors. And she also said that it was a process, like it was a very big process. And she almost sounded exhausted, kind of like, you know, she was on this big traveling trip or something, like going by train, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's so interesting.
Yes, it is. It really makes you wonder, man. It really does.
Yeah.
I think she's in a better place. I think she probably met up with her mom and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I have to say too, she told me don't investigate me, but I did. I had to, and I'm yet to get anything from my mother. She's probably being stubborn and not going to say anything.
Right.
But all right. So this manor, Melbourne Manor, I think that's what you said. What is that exactly?
It is ridiculous.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it.
Melbourne Manor is a 10,000 square foot structure.
Wow. Okay.
That I accidentally came upon while shooting my first documentary film.
Okay.
Very interesting turn of events, and obviously, like, the first 10 minutes of my first documentary film called A Brush with Evil, the first 10 minutes of that film is quite literally us, like, stumbling upon this building, which we had no idea that, you know, just like 2 years after the fact, we would then call Malvern Manor. I would end up owning the building.
Right.
Very, very strange things. But I mean, we walked in and we experienced more activity in the first 2 hours of being on the location than we had in the last 2 years of doing this. And it's like, man, this is my job. Like, this is what I do.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. Now, it was built originally, and it was a hotel. We know it was built in the late 1800s as a hotel.
Okay.
Now, it remained that way all the way up until the 1950s. At that time, it became what we would consider to be like a nursing home type setting. Okay. Now, the nursing home, we know it didn't last very long because in the 1970s, the state of Iowa came in and they said, "Oh, your hallways aren't wide enough for proper transport of these patients, right?"
Okay.
So they tweaked it a little bit, and this is where like history becomes the absolute most fascinating for nerds like myself.
Right.
And that's where it becomes like a group home. Now, the group home is servicing any type of mental disability that you could possibly imagine.
Okay.
So there were people in there with things that we see on a daily basis, classic like addiction type cases, drugs, alcohol. There were people in there with Down syndrome, again, all very common type diseases, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum here. We have multiple personalities, or DID, I believe they call it nowadays, schizophrenia, even murderers were housed in this place. So, I mean, this is a very odd population of people coexisting under the same roof.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. Now, ultimately, it was closed down, and it just closed down in 2005, which really, in the grand scheme, isn't that long ago. But in 2005, it did close down for a laundry list of reasons why, but at the top of that list is neglect, abuse, things of that nature.
Okay,
it was not a good situation at
right.
all. And that ultimately fell on, who was running the place at that time. I mean, they're in jail now.
Right.
That gives you any indication.
Yes.
So, ridiculous stuff, man. But the amount of activity in that building is bizarre. And it's almost as if, like, I call it like a head donk is basically what I call it.
Okay.
Because you're in there, and it's almost like cat and mouse. You'll hear something from one hallway, and you'll go after it, and then you'll hear the exact same thing from where you just came from. It's bizarre, and it's almost like you're losing your mind, and your mind state is basically taking over what their mind state was.
Wow, that's crazy right there. Yeah,
it is so bizarre. So, I mean, needless to say, like, me personally, working there, being there, like, every day, like, I take a lot of smoke breaks, like, throughout the day, because it's almost too much, at sometimes. Like, it's just bizarre. Bizarre stuff.
I got a guy in the room, Danny. He's wanting to know, because it's actually a buddy of mine. It's funny. We're actually filming a documentary right now too. Sweet. And one of the things that happened to one of the girls is she got like scratched, and we got pictures of it, and it's on video and all that stuff. Have you ever had anything like that? Like anything physical ever happen to somebody in there? I know you said mentally, but what about physically?
We have a lot of the physical stuff too. Now, I will say that the physical stuff seems to happen more when the investigator, is talking a fair amount of crap. Almost like provocation.
Right.
That's usually when it happens. We have like one of our main, what I call resident spirits, right? Is a person that we just call the captain. Now, the captain was one of the original owners of the building back in the 1800s. Fairly confident in saying that the good captain isn't too cool with what we're doing in the building. But I will say he's very protective of his property.
Okay.
And
nothing wrong with that, right?
When pushed, like, it's very bizarre. Like, one night of all nights, this happened on Halloween of all nights.
Okay.
We had a group in there, and I know this group quite well. I've worked with them before, and I know for a fact they do not fabricate evidence. They throw away more than they'll present any day of the week. And I never questioned their credibility. But it was interesting when they presented me a picture of somebody's back that had been scratched, and it was the letters CAPT on their back.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, this is bizarre.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it, man. It was just nuts. I was like, I love this stuff.
That actually reminds me, too, of when we were doing our investigation, we had the Ovilus X out. You know how it brings EVP into Word, or however it manipulates it into words. And for some reason, every time we're by this mill at Gretchen's Lock, That's where I'm filming at. Every time we're at this mill, there's so much activity, and we always get a lot of names by this mill. And
interesting.
Yeah, like we've actually got. Well, I can't really say too much about it right now, but we got this one EVP that said what Devon. Okay, it said Devon. It came across the Ovulus, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. You know, who is Devon? And then we're also doing EVP, so we hear a girl say, Devon, clear as day. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. It's showing that the equipment is actually working.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't even understand. That's crazy, but it happens. Amazing. And a lot of people won't believe it, but you know what? Hey, to each their own, right?
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Now,
absolutely.
Do you do tours there, or at this place?
Yeah, we're open for tours, like walkthrough tours every day except for Mondays. Other than that, like we have, overnight investigations are more than welcome any day of the week. But yeah, like you show up at 4:00 in the afternoon, you got the place until noon the following day.
Oh wow!
Well, we try to give people enough time to cover the 10,000 square feet. I mean, it's a lot of house, to cover. And depending on group size, I mean, it's going to take them that long to really hit everything. So we try to give people their money's worth, really,
Yeah, exactly, dude. I'll tell you what, that's awesome. I really like that. It's a good amount of time. Now, my youngest sister, she always knew from an early age that she wanted to act. What about you when it comes to documentaries? When did you say, I want to be a documentary filmmaker?
Dude, it was so bizarre. So I had a super stupid experience, which ultimately led me to write my first book, which is called When Ghost Hunting Goes Wrong, A Brush with Evil, right?
Right.
Now, I did the book more or less as like a therapy session. I'm really not much of a writer. I'm really not. But it wasn't until I had some filmmaker buddies in California, they read the book, they liked it.
Okay.
And they're like, what do you think about possibly turning this into a documentary film? I'm like, nice. How do you do that, right?
Right.
And so quite literally, like I dove into the whole documentary filmmaking process, like a trial by fire. Yeah. And very run and gun type of style is what I really am more drawn to. Now, obviously, I like the B-roll shots that are sweeping and gorgeous and all of that fun stuff too.
Of course.
But for the most part, the meat and potatoes, I want somebody rigged up, and I want somebody running behind you or whatever. I mean, right. Really action-packed stuff. So as much as possible. So really, after the first film, I was like, okay, like I've wet my whistle now. Like I want more. Like I want to do as much as possible. And so from there, man, I just hit the ground running. You know?
Oh, I can imagine. That sounds like me, man. Honestly, diving into documentaries and not knowing to turn right or to turn left, or if I'm doing this right or if I'm doing that right. And right now, we just kind of we just kind of do it like locally, and a lot of local folklore we cover and stuff like that, and we pretty much just cover local stuff, and like people don't know us that much outside of what we do, and like radio wise they do, but they don't really know that much about our documentaries, which hopefully this one in 2018 and Halloween, hopefully that one turns out pretty good. But why don't you before we go any further, tell people where they can find information about you, like your website, if they want to check out your films.
So the best place to probably find me and my stuff is joshhurd.net. All the books are on there, all the films, a lot of the films are on there. The majority of my films, especially the newer stuff that I've just been putting out just over the last couple months, it's all on this new platform called VidiSpace. It's owned by Nick Groff and Elizabeth Saint.
Nice.
From Ghost of Shepherdstown. They have been amazing to work with, and really giving indie filmmakers like us a platform to stand on, so more eyes can really see your work. It's been an amazing process. So.
Yes. Yeah,
So yeah, if they just go to like VidiSpace, or if they go to thehaunted.space or VidiSpace, they'll be able to find my stuff there for sure.
Okay, yeah, I just like to get that out there a couple times during the show.
Yeah,
because,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man, because some people come in, they leave for a little bit, they come back, you know. We got another question. Someone wants to know, is there anywhere that you've ever investigated that actually keeps drawing you back there for some reason?
Yeah, it's a great question. Heck yeah, absolutely. So that was ultimately like the reason why I did that first book, the first film. Like, it all is tied together to one little location. And I was a college student. I was going to Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville, Missouri. And
wow.
Obviously around Halloween is when, you know, this stuff gets the most press, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
We heard about this old abandoned chapel.
Okay.
It's called Workman's Chapel. And you go out there and it looks like an old beat up barn. It's like one room. You got 3 windows on each side, 2 windows in the back, and an opening that looks just like a barn door. Like, it is huge.
Oh, wow.
A big, wide, gaping opening. But the structure itself is fairly small. Whatever is inside or around that chapel is nothing but evil. It is terrible. Absolutely terrible. To the point where it literally took the work of a priest to rectify this whole situation, man. Like, again, I was young, dumb. I was in college. I had watched 4 episodes of Ghost Hunters and thought I knew everything there was about this stuff. And so it was just very, very odd. Like, we bit off way more than we could chew, super fast. And it was one of those situations where you're like, okay, well, Ghost Hunters hasn't covered this yet, so now what?
There you go.
You know, so it was interesting. That is for sure. But that is the one place, man, even to this day,
right?
Like, doing the film, I was like, okay, this is us putting this crap behind us once and for all. We're going to stand up to this thing. We're going to say our piece, and we're going to bounce.
Right.
You know, that's what we're going to do. And even to this day, man, like 4 years now after the fact, I'm like still getting that itch where I'm like, I want to go back. Like, I want to go back so bad.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Like, what happened there that was so bad? You said it was like really bad.
It was so weird. So the first thing was, we went out there for 4 consecutive nights. The first 3 nights, nothing really major was going on at all. The 4th night, we hadn't even set foot inside of this structure. And my friend Tiffany, she was crouched down in front of this building, looking inside of it, because through this building, like I said, it's old and it's fallen apart. You can see the haze of the city lights kind of bleeding through this structure, right?
Wow.
Like, there's holes through it. The moonlight was coming through, you know, things of that nature. Now, on this particular night, you couldn't see 2 inches in front of your face. It was that dark inside of this structure, but only inside the structure.
Weird.
Now, again, like, I didn't know what to think of that. So I'm like, maybe it's better we just commit this to memory and then take off, right? Well, Tiffany was sitting there. She was crouched down like a catcher in baseball, right? And she's commenting on the fact, like, I can't believe how black it is. Now, as she is not even finishing this sentence, she is hit with something so hard that she flies backward. Her body is like in an L formation. Like, she's sitting in a chair with her legs extended out from her, basically.
Wow.
She flies back a good 2 to 3 feet, lands on her butt. She does 2 backward somersaults over herself and is laying face down in this gravel.
God. Wow.
Like, terrible. Now, obviously, at that point, we had our fill of fun.
Right, of course. I would hope so.
We got her back, we got her back to her dorm room.
Right.
She, again, like, she is a straight A student. She is what I would call a very effervescent type of personality, very bubbly and fun and happy. She was full of faith. If anybody in that group was the strongest in faith, it was definitely her. which again may be why she was targeted first.
Very well, yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm just obviously spitballing here, but it makes you wonder. Now, she didn't leave that dorm room for a solid week.
Right.
She never attended a single class. She never ate a single meal. Anytime, like, it took me getting the resident advisor to key in to her room. I mean, it was ridiculous. Now, you know, again, ultimately, it took the work of a priest with all of that to rectify that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where it gets super stupid on my part, because I left that college. You know, at the end of the semester, I was like, I'm gone. Like, see you later. And I ended up forming another paranormal group in another college here in Iowa, and basically told them that exact same story I just got done telling you.
Right.
Now, obviously, their first reaction is, dude, we got to go. And I'm like, no, I think you missed the point of the story. And, you know, peer pressure being what it is, and me being only like 20 years old at the time, I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go.
Right. But
it was the exact same scenario yet again. Whole new group of people. First 3 nights, nothing. Fourth night in particular, my buddy Blake, who was inside the chapel alone, again, we were experiencing the exact same blackness, but this time we decided, obviously, to take it a few steps further. We said, we're going 10 minutes alone inside the chapel, one at a time, right? Now, everybody else was going to be around the door. Again, stupid. So we go, Blake's in there. He was the last one to go, and it sounds like log chain is being drug on the floor and nothing is moving. It sounds like the floorboards are being ripped up again. Nothing is moving.
Wow.
And then you hear, and now obviously we didn't hear this initially, but Blake, thank God, was holding a digital recorder in his hand. Okay. You hear him say, I'm going to, or I want to leave, right?
Okay.
And he's kind of like, almost like whispered, like he was terrified. You hear an EVP on there come through plain as day, and it says, you're dead.
Wow.
Without even knowing, we hear Blake take 2 steps towards the front entrance, and then a god-awful choking sound. And the choking sound in a big whoosh of air. The choking sound was ultimately Blake being drugged out of the chapel, out of the window of the chapel, flying almost like Hollywood style through the air and out that window. He landed obviously on his butt and laid there for a good 10 seconds before he got up, but he couldn't move. Like, when he got up, he was that terrified. So it was crap like that, and experiences like that, like, are why we still to this day wake up in the middle of the night screaming. You know, it's almost like a paranormal PTSD thing.
Right.
It's so bizarre. But ultimately, that's why I wanted to do the film project. I wanted to do the book project. I wanted to put this crap to bed.
Right.
But I wanted to bring that group along with me.
Right.
You know?
What is the name of your paranormal group, by the way?
We don't really have a name.
Okay.
We just kind of, you know, we just
kind of that's good.
It. Yeah. We just kind of do our thing, and we try to document it as much as possible.
Right.
Usually, the only time that these guys are investigating the paranormal is with me for the purposes of a film. You know?
Right.
So it's pretty cool stuff.
It's funny how you mentioned, you know, when you were in college, you were you were getting stuff because you were watching Ghost Hunters and stuff like that on TV. It is so funny, man, because I lived in Florida at the time, and me and my wife was like, we didn't even know about EVP, and it was like, I think right around the same time White Noise came on. So
dude.
Yeah, what a movie that was.
It's a great film.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go out and get one of them recorders. And at the time, you could still buy a little recorder and have a little mini cassette tape in there.
That's exactly what Blake was holding
that
night. That is the
what's weird?
Same type of media.
I find out that those recorders sometimes work a lot better than digital. I don't know.
There is so much, and that's what people don't realize. Even the frequencies that are picked up are night and day between analog and digital.
They are. Yes. It's insane.
The range of data that you can get with 2 different devices is by far better. Like, if you can use
amazing.
both, use both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we use both, actually. I was surprised to have found one. I was actually shopping in Walmart, believe it or not. And
absolutely.
I happened to come, I was looking through the electronics, I was looking at video games and stuff. I'm a gamer, and I seen this recorder, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. A cassette recorder? I'm like, I'm definitely getting that for doing this film, and I got that, and I'll tell you what, I love it, dude. But what I was telling you about is we went out, we got the recorder, and so we're like, we're going to go to the cemetery, and we're going to see what we can get, what better place to go. And in Florida, the Sunshine State, it was bright and sunny out, just a beautiful day, hot as always, and we went into the graveyard, and I'm telling you, man, we got so many EVPs in broad daylight in this cemetery, and it said, I remember a female said, "I want you. Did you record me?" And then she followed it up by saying, "Did ya?" And then another female said, "Call the doctor." But the way they said "call the doctor," it was like, "Call the doctor." It was so eerie. And I remember getting home and looking at this recorder and almost not wanting to touch it. And I was just like, I instantly got on. Remember, they had Yahoo groups back in the day where you could.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, before it was like MySpace and all that, they had like Yahoo groups. So I was on there and I was looking up, ghosts and stuff like that and paranormal investigators. And it was just amazing, man. I was an instant believer after that. And I always tell people, you hear my EVPs that I get and stuff like that. And some of them are good. Some of them you can tell what they're saying. Some of them are just class A. And a lot of people think, it could be fake. You know what? Could it? Absolutely, it could be fake. Sure. But when you're out there and you do it for firsthand, and you have a firsthand experience, and you realize this stuff is real, I'll tell you what, your whole world changes, man.
Exactly.
So
it's like you finally open your eyes. Yeah.
Exactly. The blinders come off, and poof, there's a whole new world right there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your newer film that you're working on, your newest one.
So the latest one that I just put out is it's just called Patience. Now it kind of follows this story of back at the turn of the century, more or less like the early 19-teens.
Okay.
Like 1913-ish. We're talking St. Louis, Missouri. Spiritualist movement was kind of in full swing. A lot of people were using Ouija boards and things of that nature, just as more or less like entertainment.
Right.
This is what they did. It was awesome. So we know there was a lady. Her name was Pearl Curran. Well, Pearl sat around all day with a neighbor lady who was a friend of hers, and so while their husbands were at work, they would sit around, have tea in the afternoons, but they would sit around, they would dabble with the Ouija board.
Right.
They ultimately thought was utter nonsense, honestly.
Okay, I can feel that, yes.
Yeah. Now, honestly, like, what's interesting about this is they start to get a very weird series of messages. And it says, "Many moons ago I lived, again I come.
Wow."
Patience, and it says, "Patience Worth is my name." Now, interesting, like Patience Worth, we can't really find a record of anybody named Patience Worth. Now, Patience, or the spirit claiming to be Patience, said she was from Dorset, England. She came to America. She was murdered by Indians, but her life was cut short. She had aspirations of becoming an author. She wanted to write books. She wanted to write poetry, plays, things of that nature.
Right.
And ultimately then, the spirit calling herself Patience Worth through Pearl Curran authored over 400,000 words over the course of 25 years, putting out, and guys, it's interesting because you can still find books on Amazon.com that were authored by Patience Worth. It is so bizarre.
That is weird.
Now, here's where it gets super jacked, because Pearl Curran, the lady that was running the Ouija board, was a very uneducated woman, and I mean very uneducated.
Okay.
From everything that I can find and read about her, it's basically like she really couldn't think her way out of a paper bag. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
She had a very poor education at best. Now, these books that were then coming out of this Ouija board and ultimately her were being praised. We're talking like New York Times bestseller, critical acclaim. People were loving these books. So it makes you wonder, either one, this is legit, and she was talking to a spirit, the spirit authored all these books, blah, blah, blah. Or two, this is like the greatest paranormal hoax perpetuated on the paranormal community ever.
Right.
So I wanted to get to the bottom of this, right? Like as much as possible. So I ended up going to St. Louis. I drove down there with my brother. We ended up like going to the historical society. We met the guy who runs the historical society. They actually have the entire Patience Worth collection there, which being able to like put hands on history was amazing.
Yes, anyway, I know exactly what you mean. Yes,
like getting his take on the story. I mean, just so cool. Like such a cool ghost story that nobody's really heard of before. And I'm like, this is like, you know, I mean, St. Louis for me is only like a 6-hour drive. I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to do that. You know?
Nice.
Not bad at all. So, man, like, it's such a cool story.
Right. I was going to ask you, too, like, what's the scariest thing that ever happened to you? But I'll tell you what, some of the things that you've said so far, I mean, would stand out to me. I mean, Tiffany being pushed or thrown across the room, your friend. What's the scariest thing?
See, and those were moments that you, like, question your own sanity, right?
Of course,
like, you don't even know what's going on. But, like, we did, so that was A Brush with Evil, right? That was the whole film, A Brush with Evil.
Okay.
We ended up doing A Brush with Evil Part 2, which took place, and it all took place inside of Malvern Manor. Over the course of one night, it was basically my wife's idea. So my wife had this grand idea of what she wanted to do, and from there, I was just supposed to shoot it, be in it a little bit, and we would hopefully have something tangible at the end of it all, right?
Right.
Well, I didn't know what she had planned. But it's interesting because at first she's like, well, we're going to send a group of ladies up, and they're going to investigate. Then we're going to send this group, my group, right, of guys, and we're going to go up and we're going to investigate. We're going to see what happens. We might correlate evidence and see what's mixing and matching. Pretty interesting. But then she started to pull us aside one by one. She pulled us back into what we call the nursing home wing of Malvern Manor.
Okay.
One-on-one, and she would ask us very generic questions. The questions were kind of like, you know, as a paranormal investigator, what would you consider to be your greatest asset? What do you rely on the most? Your sense of sight, your sense of sound? What is it that you rely on it? Whatever that answer was about to be taken away from you. In complete isolation session, where you're by yourself in a room of her choosing, and that greatest asset of yours was going to be then taken away. Now, me being the moron that I am, and not knowing what was going on, I said, well, I rely on everything.
Oh, right? God. Oh,
so
here we go.
Imagine me, So I'm sitting now in a room, one of the more active rooms in the manor. I'm sitting on a chair. I am tied to the chair. My arms are tied behind my back. I have earplugs in my ears. I have a blindfold over my face. I am screwed, like in every way, shape, and form, right? And it was interesting because I started to hear, or, I mean, let's be honest, I'm not hearing anything because my ears have been compromised.
Of course.
So I'm not hearing anything. I'm perceiving sound. And what I'm perceiving as sound sounds like a little girl. Now, I can't make out anything that this little girl's saying. And trust me when I say this, like, I'm about as psychic as a blade of freaking grass.
I gotcha.
Not at all. So I do rely on tech and things like that, right?
Of course.
So I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm probably losing my mind. However, I should probably call this out just to document it, just to note it. And so what's interesting is every piece of audio equipment that we had in that room was picking up the same anomaly.
Wow.
Now, where it gets super jacked is the fact that the guy running the camera in the room, who was not compromised in any way, didn't hear a freaking thing.
That's crazy.
So here comes 1,000 new questions as to how we are even perceiving our own reality. What is real and what is fake, or what is complete horse crap, could be night and day different from person A to person B.
Of course, yes.
Dude, like, that was the most terrified I have ever been in my life.
I'll tell you what, that's amazing, though, man, how you say that the tech was actually recording what you were hearing.
Dude, it was so messed up. And I'm telling you, trust me, we had that room wired.
Right.
Everything that I could possibly get in there, I could, you know? So for that to happen, like, I just don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Right, of course.
Like, again, it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, you may have got one answer, but now here comes 1,000 more questions as to what's really going on. And
right.
are we ever going to really solve this crossword puzzle?
Now, I'll tell you something right now, Josh. This might sound weird, but we are 46 minutes into this interview, believe it or not.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, 46 minutes in, and I wrote it down. I marked it down. 42 minutes in, I swear to you, I think we captured an EVP. I think something came through. I heard something. You were talking, and then I could hear something. No one's around me unless somebody's around you and whispered to you. I swear to you.
I'm at a hotel right now. I'm just meandering about right now.
So I just wanted to note that 42 minutes in, that it sounded like a guy said something.
Screw that.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to rewind it. You might want to check out the history of the room you're in.
Right, no doubt.
Who knows? Like one of the, speaking of hotels, one of the things that stands out to me the most, I don't know if you ever seen a YouTube video of, there's this, it's like a hotel or something, I believe it's a hotel, yeah. And this security guy gets a call to go up and check on this room, because he hears a woman wailing, okay? She's like,
saw that.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And how he went in there and heard her screaming, called for backup.
Right.
And he entered the room, and it looked like something exited the room when he went in there. I'll tell you what.
He's commenting on the fact, like, everything is disheveled in the room, like things are tipped upside down. Super bizarre.
Yeah, stuff like that, that's eerie to me, man. Like, why is she wailing like that? What was she experiencing? What was going on?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And we talk about death and the fear of death. And one thing that always stood out to me, too, was Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures. They interviewed him one time. I've seen this interview with him, and they asked him, do you fear death? Okay? And I swear to you, he was like, I am so terrified of death, you have no idea.
I tell you why, and it's weird because I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get it because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, me dealing with some of this nasty dark crap that I have in the past.
Yes.
I've almost been like accustomed to it now, where I'm like, I don't necessarily fear it. Now, what I do fear is the fact that when I die, what the hell is going to be waiting for me on the other side, right?
Right.
That's what I'm more afraid of. Like, the dying process itself, or the process of expiring, I don't necessarily fear that. It's what's about to come just a few seconds later.
Yes, yeah. That's like I said, that's the question of the hour, man. What happens when the lights go out, that heart stops? And
it's so interesting, like, going into that and just thinking about that, because like you look at like the human brain or just the mind or consciousness, whatever, and so many people out there will be like, well, we only really use 10 to 12% of our like brain potential. So we're talking like, I guess if you want to get like scientific, let's call it potential energy, right?
Right, of course.
So we could say that. Now, what if then somehow during the dying process, we are then given access to the remaining 90, give or take, some odd percent.
Wow.
And within that lies what we would call a soul, a chi, a life force, what have you. What if that's what's going on? Because, like, let's be honest here. If we did not, like, if we were 100% capable of using 100% functionality of the brain,
right,
we would absolutely not need a shell. We would not need what we would consider a body. We would quite literally be free-floating energy, which is, oddly enough, what we search for.
Yes.
What we are looking for, different disembodied pockets of energy, right? That's it. So, what if during that dying process, that's what's going on? It's no secret that people say, they're unlocking that third eye. And somehow it's always located right in the middle of your flipping head. Right?
I know.
It's like, it's all connected somehow.
It's really interesting you bring up that point about what about if when you die, you are able to access that 90-something percent or whatever it is. Because they did a study, actually. And the study said that when people are dying, for some reason, their brains go very, very active at death. Did you know about that?
It's interesting, too, because then, I think it's modern day science trying to come up with an answer for what, like, for example, like my uncle, right? Like smiling, seeing something that nobody else can see. It's like, well, your brain is misfiring. This is going on, and this is going on, and all of that, and they're trying to come up with a scientific answer. And that's fine and dandy, but damn it, sometimes science cannot answer everything. Like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Like, science, for all intents and purposes, is still in its infancy.
Yes.
It very much so is. And I mean, same thing with our field of study. It's so infantile right now. We have no idea what's going on. We still may never.
Right. Here's another thing that stands out to me. You had your friend Tiffany that was pushed. Okay. If the dead are okay, well, obviously they're dead. Are they allowed to actually hurt us? I mean, I realize she wasn't actually hurt, but
right. But she was influenced,
by
something. Like, something had her,
right?
And so that makes you wonder: was this, or has this thing, whatever the hell it was,
right?
Did it ever walk the earth?
Right, of course. Or is it a demon or something?
Spiritual? Yeah, right.
That really makes me wonder, man. Because I will tell you this: on Halloween night, I swear to God, on Halloween night, me and a bunch of friends, we decided to go to the graveyard. This new graveyard. I had never been there, and this lady swore that it was supposed to be haunted. It was by this old church. So we're like, okay, let's go. And it's not even that big of a graveyard, and it's parked right off like a highway. So it's not really a scary environment. So I was like, all right, we'll go, we'll check it out. And right at the end, okay, and we have to walk a good distance to get to her van where we all load in. And right at the end, she says, we're doing an EVP recording, and she says, if there's anything you have to say, go ahead and say it right now. And she turned the EVP recorder off, and we proceeded to walk out. Well, we always like to review it together, so we turned it on in the van. And when we got to that part where she said, is there anything that you have to say, go and say it now, I swear to you, this voice came across, Josh, that was so creepy, and it said, I am watching you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm telling you, it was like you were shocked through the core, literally.
Nuts.
Like, I remember me and my wife were actually sitting in the back of the van, and that was one of those EVPs to where you heard it all the way in the back of the van. There's no mistaking it. It ain't holding it up to your ear to hear it.
Wow.
It's actually, whoop, there it is. It was insane.
Wow. That is so impressive. I love it.
What do you think that is? Why are they able to talk through these devices, but we can't really hear them sometimes? I mean, sometimes people do.
That's what's odd, yeah. So it's all like, this is obviously just my opinion, but I think it has to do frequency, right? And the fact that we are only privy to hear certain amounts of frequency from point A to point B, and that's all we're really given access to. But there's so much more going on, just like how we're only able to see and observe certain colors, but yet there's all these other spectrums that, again, we're not privy to. We can't see.
Right.
There's so much more that's actually going on here that's just out of our grasp physically, to hear or see or sense. It's so bizarre. But I think, like, honestly, the answer lies somewhere in there with frequency and all of that.
Yes, I agree. I would absolutely agree with you. I wanted to ask you, like, have you ever actually used the ghost box?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I have a geo
Oh,
box.
okay. Now, have you heard of, what's his name? Steve Huff Paranormal.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Now, what is your opinion on that guy's ghost boxes? I mean, that...
a few of those, it's been pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah.
I've never used one of his boxes.
Right.
But I will say, like, some of the things that he's got, pretty
amazing.
Impressive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, pretty impressive.
Yes.
No matter what you guys, or anybody thinks of whoever.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, if you're getting evidence, you're getting evidence. And that's ultimately what we're all after,
Right. Is there a favorite tool that you have, a favorite device that you like to use when out in the field?
Dude, honestly, like, it's just me. Like, if I had to choose anything, it would just be me in a dark room.
That's a good... Yeah, I like
just
that.
Trying to, like, pick up anything. Now, I will say this. Like, one thing that I've tried to do as much as possible is I'll take, like, a K2 meter or a EDI device or whatever.
Okay.
And if I start to, like, feel something odd, right? If I'm feeling anything, again, I'm not psychic or anything. But
well, there's a part in your brain that might be.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's weird, right?
Right.
So, like, it's bizarre to me, because if I start to get a hit on a device or something is going on, I try to take note of how I'm feeling physically. If I'm hot, if I'm cold, if my hair is standing up, or if I'm nauseous, or if whatever. And I try to correlate evidence with what is going on with the actual device. Like, I try to correlate how I'm feeling with what's going on in the device, so I could possibly commit that to a later on, experience, if it is there. I try to do things like that as often as possible. Just like, ultimately, I'm trying to see, I think, if I'm cock-hot duty crap crazy, or if there's something legitimate going on, and there is something. Like, there's definitely some form of whatever it is that's going on that we don't quite have a grasp on. But there's something very odd definitely happening.
One thing that gets me, too, is I noticed a lot of people say they experience, like, nausea whenever they're around stuff like this. I personally get dizzy. Like, when I go into a graveyard, if I get, like, really dizzy, it seems like seem to always capture an EVP around that point. And I don't claim to be psychic or anything like that, but it's like, it's almost like what it's doing is kind of influencing my brain somehow. And
yes, like, that's the exact same thing that I'm trying to document with my own self. Like, I love that. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Josh, we are about over, man. Tell people, this has been a great interview, man. Tell people again where they can find your stuff. Plug anything you want to do, man. Go ahead. What do you want to say to anybody?
Yeah, if you guys just go to joshhurd.net, you'll be able to find all my books. A lot of my films are there. If you guys go to thehaunted.space, you can cruise over there, see some of the fun stuff that I'm doing over there now. Man, like, I'm all over the place, I guess. find me on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But
You know what's funny is when you actually go to Google and you type in your name and then you go to pictures, and the pictures that are actually associated with your name, I crack up when I look at myself, man. It's hilarious.
I'm like, oh God, what is it? Is it bad?
Right.
I have yet to Google myself. I might try that.
I did actually, just to see, because people have said they've made comments before, and so I wanted to see, and I was pretty amazed at what Google did. Google's pretty smart, I will tell you that.
That's funny.
Google is smart. But
I love it.
Josh, I'll tell you what, buddy, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you on this stormy evening in Ohio. And
That was great.
yeah, it flew by, man. What a show.
It really did, man.
Yes,
I
it did.
appreciate it, though. Thank you.
I hope that nothing lurks in your hotel room right now.
Dude, yeah, I just want to sleep. That's it.
All right, Josh, I'm going to let you go, bud. I want to thank you for coming on, buddy.
Thanks a lot, brother.
All right, you take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.